Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to my shack down by the creek. Actually, I have a real home now. It's a cabin. It's just one room, but I have real walls, and now I have pictures of my family up on the wall. I'll do a family photo video at some point. But right now, we're going to talk about the rise of the vigilante. Don't. So, what is a vigilante? So a vigilante is a person or a group of people who take the law into their own hands and administer justice as they see it, for the purpose of justice. So it's to right a wrong, it's to exact revenge, it's to put down a predator or, I guess the earliest vigilante squads were groups of hunters who went after man-eating lions and bears and tigers, oh my. Right? Also, one could say that a lynch mob is some kind of vigilante squad. And let's talk about that word because it's taken on a lot. I mean, it's been hijacked and taken over. But for me, before I ever heard of a racially motivated hanging that they call a certain L word, to me, those mobs who hung people were from Old West movies. And that's really where a lot of vigilante ideology in America stems from, is the Old West. So what typically happens is that people take the law into their own hands when anytime there is an absence of true justice and law enforcement. So in the Old West, there wasn't real law and order. And, every man took care of himself as best he could, but occasionally you had to rise up together against a threat. Okay. And so, the lynch mob or the posse, as it were, or more historically accurate, they were called vigilance committees. And basically, they were militias, law enforcement groups that were impromptu gathered from the local men, armed men, to participate in some kind of act of justice, which usually ended up with the accused criminal either getting some form of quick trial or none at all and hung on the spot. And we know this. We know this from, what is it? Hang 'em High and all of these. Was that the one with Eastwood, where they hang him accidentally and they don't get the job all the way done, and then he hunts them all down? So we know the Old West connotations, but what's arising now in America are political lynch mobs, political vigilante squads, political posses, as it were. The first ones to pop up that you could put a name to, as far as I could tell, other than the old traditional evil characters of the KKK, was the Antifa squads that started coming out of Portland. Rose City Antifa and all of the affiliates now that have spread, by any means necessary, BAM, down there in California, in the Berkeley area. They started getting violent and becoming basically vigilante mobs, social justice warrior mobs, okay? And the militias have been around a long time it's a big game of what if. What if the Russians invaded and we had Red Dawn? Well, we have to be able to do our part. So it's really just a lot of overly prepared men and women, families in some cases, in Western states, foreseeing some future situation where they wouldn't be adequately protected. So they wanted to drill for such occasions, like a fire drill, but for war, the fire drill for war. And there are all sorts of militias. And we had this, militia, the Wolverine, Watchmen rise up, apparently. Now, this is all coming from leftist sources, and so I don't even know what to believe anymore. I believe that the people that I saw a video on that they say were plotting in Michigan to kidnap the governor of Michigan there, I believe them to be some kind of anarchist with a capitalist edge. So, in other words, they're Americans that don't believe in any kind of government and sovereign rule, okay? But Alex Jones and other people right now are saying that those guys were Antifa and they weren't any kind of a right-wing militia at all. Although the term watchman does come from, the right-wing militia leaders and thinkers have captured that. It's from the Old Testament, where it says that you're liable if you're the watchman and you don't sound the alarm. So these militias were, they call themselves watchmen. They're to sound the alarm. So the origin of that group is yet to be determined, but I think they're anarcho-capitalists, which makes them far right-wing anarchist, anti-government types that don't believe in police. They want to defund the police, but they don't believe in paying taxes at all, and they don't believe that anybody can tell them what to do and that there's no law, which is anarchy. So that's who I think they are. Feel free to disagree. Other people are saying that they are Antifa and BLM, but I just think that they're finding themselves aligned with the far left because they have the mutual goal of destroying our society in mind. And so that makes them not good guys. And even though, they couldn't have picked a better person to pull their little plot on, except for maybe Kate Brown, but it still makes them bad guys. Even if drug dealers were ripping off other drug dealers, that still makes them armed robbers and drug dealers. So, these guys may have been going up against tyrants, but they're breaking the law. It reminds me a lot. What happened here in Michigan reminds me a lot of the John Brown story from the Civil War days. So basically, John Brown decided he wanted to try to free the slaves, and he had a little bit of money, so he hired a blacksmith to make hundreds of swords. And, he couldn't afford guns, so he thought he'd arm the slaves with swords. And his intention was to go through the South and start slave uprisings by handing out these weapons and telling them to go, fight their slave owners. You outnumber them. Here's your weapons. And that's just kind of a little quick history lesson here. But he decided at some point he needed some guns, so he got some guys together, and they decided to hit the U.S. Armory at Springfield, Missouri. I think it was Missouri. The Springfield Armory, still the same Springfield Armory we think of today. And so the thing is, I think there was some Marines there at the Springfield Armory. They were defended, and then the local, before they could get in and out with the guns, the locals went, "Hey, we're being attacked by this armed group," and the local militia basically rose up and put down the attempt on the armory there, and consequently John Brown was hung for treason or something, for just, I don't know what I think it was treason, yeah. At any rate, but it's funny because he was hung by the Union and he was fighting for the Union. He just started fighting too soon. He didn't wait for a declaration of war. He didn't do it according to the rules and the method, and he took matters into his own hands. He rose up a vigilante squad, and then he tried to arm an uprising. And the thing is, ultimately, he would be on the right side of history, as it were. The slaves were freed, and the government not only armed them, they gave them uniforms and shoes and weapons, and had them join their ranks in the military. But so what they did, they being the Union later on would do, is the exact same thing John Brown tried to do, right? But John Brown did it illegally and too soon without the blessing of the state. So, it reminds me of the thing in Michigan. Trump's White House is gonna, and the people who would love to see Whitmer fall are going to prosecute these guys for trying to do it to her. Trust me, they're going to prison for a really long time. If half of what they say is true and they can prove it, they're gone. Bye-bye, But the thing that they were planning to do to the governor is something that's going to probably happen in war. There's a fine line between war and terrorism, and it mainly has to do with order and structure, and oversight. So, if civil war breaks out, how are they going to look at this group of people in Michigan in history? And I guess he who wins the war gets to write the history books now, don't they? So, I will say this: it's a really interesting time to be alive. I don't intend to be part of any kind of vigilance squad, although I'm going to put together a neighborhood watch, which at some point could evolve into some kind of form of local law enforcement if the need be. But really, the idea of going out and trying to kick this thing off and get it started and instigated is just going to get you prosecuted by your own allies. You know, it's a good way to get both sides, on your back. So anyway, what do you think? Are we going to see more rises of militias? And, why are they rising? Well, they're rising because there is no law enforcement. Law enforcement has been hamstrung. It's been vilified. In many cases, have been defunded. They've been demoralized, so they don't want to come and help you. And there's crimes going unpunished, crimes going unreported, crimes going unprosecuted, crimes going it's unstoppable, and it's just going to get worse. Okay. So, yeah, I think anytime historically, when you have a vacuum of justice like you did in the Old West, you're going to see the rise of vigilantes who think they have the righteous right to take law into their own hands. And the result is often bloody and chaotic and at times barbaric. I mean, it can be civil. And there's that gray line, like it makes me think of Judge Roy Bean, the only law west of the Pecos, the Old West character who was technically law enforcement, was probably about as crooked as any of the outlaws he tried. And it was he was corrupt and not really official, and I'm not sure how he got his position. Self-appointed warlords. Will we see self-appointed warlords in America? We're already starting to see some of that Somalian ideology being transferred over in Somali-rich areas, like up in Elon Omar's district, where the tribal leader, the group of their area, and there could be thousands of them in the Minnesota, Minneapolis area around there, and whoever the tribal leader says vote for is who you vote for. You don't really get a free vote, even though you're in a free country. Your culture dictates how you vote. Some ways, like church used to be to some degree, they pressure you to. But with the tribal leaders, it's more like warlords. It's more like the mafia telling you, you're going to vote the way we tell you to if you want to keep your fingers working. If you like your legs walking you where you go, and you don't want to be rolled around to work every day. If you want to be spoon fed, then you probably ought to vote for whoever we tell you to. And that's another thing. What role will the cartels and organized crime and gangs, street gangs, play in this civil war? They're going to play a role. We may already start seeing them play a role. Recently some major gang members in major well-known gangs who I will not name, but if I named them, you'd recognize the names of these gangs, have pretty much said, it's open season on police. It's open season on rich old white dudes. Rick Moranis, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Rick Moranis, I'll always remember him from Ghostbusters because, are you the gatekeeper? I am the keymaster. Are you the gatekeeper? They have it backwards. I am the keymaster. Are you the gatekeeper? Or I'm the gate. I don't know. Anyway, you know the scene. Rick Moranis, sucker punched, just. And I hate to say that I did watch Saturday Night Live monologue the other night, and the famous comedian, who I will not name, who lowered himself to a subhuman level by going on that show. If you ask me, he's done as far as I'm concerned. And he bombed there as well. They didn't like him there either because he was shooting at both sides from the middle. But anyway, Burr, there you go. I said it. So, yeah, he thought that was funny. He said, New York is back. Rick Moranis has been needing to get sucker punched for a long time. Hooray. Rick Moranis got, a 60-something-year-old man got hit in the side of the head by a strong, much stronger, much younger person who could have easily killed him if he hit him right and intended to. He could have killed him. He's lucky he didn't kill him. You punch an old guy, you could kill him. It happens all the time. Sometimes they kill each other on accident, trying to fight each other when you get old. I tell my kids, I can't wrestle with you anymore. My bones are brittle. Of course, I'm getting pretty fit anymore. You guys, one of these days I'm going to do a body shot and let you see where I'm sitting at here because, yeah. Anyway, feeling pretty good today. Should have saw me yesterday. I have good days and bad days, right? But at any rate, yeah, the street gangs have pretty much said it's okay to do that. We want you to do that kind of thing. As part of this overall race war, they're attempting to ignite. And it's really, honestly, to me, it's more of a culture war. It's the war between those who believe CNN and those who don't. That's it. If you believe CNN, you're on the one side, and if you believe CNN is fake news, you're on the other. And unfortunately, some people on both sides are ready to shoot it out, and it's starting to play out. So this isn't going to be a civil war like in 1860s. I don't think. It could if the West Coast states decide to secede from the Union, which there's some talk that's their plan, with Nancy Pelosi as their new president, with her nephew, the governor of California already. All you got to do is pull Kate Brown in, get some leftists, give them some machine guns, maybe get some help from China, probably already lined up. And, we got a civil war like in the 1860s. But until then, what you've got is a culture war. And you'll see as one side won't prosecute or wrongfully prosecutes because they're corrupted or they're biased, right? Like one police force won't go after the lefties or one won't go after the right-wingers because they agree and they let them get away with stuff, and there's this perceived injustice coming from either direction. In answer to that, you'll have this uprising of some kind of militia into that vacuum, some kind of vigilance squad, some kind of vigilantes. So tell me what you think. Is the rise of the vigilante just going to get worse? Are the feds going to rise up and stamp them all out from both directions? What do you think should happen? And once again, are we on the verge of a civil war? God save our republic.